The fluorescent lights at Chipotle buzzed overhead as I picked at my bowl, the carnitas already cold. 6 months since David and I had ended things, and I still couldn't finish a meal without thinking about our Tuesday night ritual of sharing a burrito bowl right here at this same corner table. The breakup had gutted me. 6 years together, gone in a single conversation about growing in different directions. "Excuse me, you mind if I sit?" I looked up to see a man in his 30s, average height with sandy brown hair and a disarming smile. The restaurant was nearly empty, plenty of other tables available, but I nodded anyway. Maybe some harmless conversation would distract me from the familiar ache in my chest. "I'm William," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "I've seen you here before. You always sit at this table." Something cold flickered in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. Chipotle was my neighborhood spot. Of course, regulars would notice each other. "I'm Marisol," I said, managing a polite smile. William had a way of asking just the right questions, drawing me into conversation without making it feel forced. He worked in marketing, lived a few blocks away, had recently moved to the area. Normal things, safe things, but his eyes never left my face, studying my expressions with an intensity that made me shift in my seat. "You seem like you're going through something," he said after I'd mentioned I was contemplating cutting my hair. "Fresh start?" I found myself telling him about David, about the loneliness that had become my constant companion. William listened with the kind of focused attention I hadn't experienced in months, nodding at all the right moments, offering gentle observations that showed he understood. When I finally glanced at my phone, we'd been talking for over an hour. "I should probably head home," I said, gathering my things. "This was really nice, Marisol. Would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime? Somewhere with better lighting than this place?" His laugh was warm, genuine. The offer hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to say yes. William was attractive, attentive, clearly interested. But the wound David had left was still too raw, still bleeding whenever I pressed against it. "I'm really flattered, but I'm not ready for that yet," I said. "I'm still working through some things." William's smile never wavered. "I completely understand. Thanks for being honest. Have a good night, Marisol." As I walked to my car, I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. The parking lot was dimly lit, my footsteps echoing off the asphalt. I fumbled with my keys, that familiar post-social interaction exhaustion settling over me. In my peripheral vision, I caught a glimpse of movement. Someone else leaving the restaurant, but didn't think much of it. The drive home took me through quiet residential streets lined with oak trees that created tunnels of shadow under the streetlights. At a red light, I glanced in my rearview mirror and noticed a dark sedan 2 cars behind me. Nothing unusual about that, but something made me keep checking the mirror as I drove. The sedan turned when I turned, stopped when I stopped. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my heart was hammering against my ribs. The sedan drove past without slowing, and I caught a glimpse of the driver. Just a silhouette, nothing more. I sat in my car for a long moment, feeling foolish. This was what heartbreak did to you, made you paranoid and jumpy. Inside my apartment, I double-checked the locks and closed all the blinds before settling onto the couch with a cup of tea. The silence felt different tonight, more oppressive. I turned on the TV for background noise, but found myself straining to hear beyond the artificial laughter of a sitcom. That's when I heard it. A soft, scraping sound like something being dragged against the outside wall. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. But the feeling of being watched pressed against me like a weight. Over the next 3 days, the sensation followed me everywhere. At work, I felt eyes on me through the windows. At the grocery store, I kept turning around, expecting to see someone duck behind the cereal aisle. Walking to my car, I found myself practically running, keys ready before I even left the building. The flowers appeared on Thursday morning. A dozen red roses left on my doorstep with no card, no delivery notice. Beautiful and somehow sinister in their anonymity. I threw them in the dumpster and called the building's front desk, but no one had seen who delivered them. Friday night, the power went out. Not just in my apartment, the whole building. But as I peered through my peephole into the hallway, I could see the emergency lighting was still working. Just my unit then. I called the building manager, but it went straight to voicemail. The maintenance emergency line played a recording about non-urgent issues being addressed during business hours. I lit some candles and tried to read, but every shadow seemed to shift and breathe in the flickering light. That's when I heard the sound of my spare key in the lock. The key I'd given David years ago. The key I'd forgotten to ask for back. The lock turned with agonizing slowness, and I realized with crystal clarity that David wasn't the one using it. David was living in Miami now, had been for months. Someone else had that key. Someone who had been watching, learning, waiting. The door opened. Hello, Marisol. William stepped into my candlelit living room, and in the dancing shadows, his familiar smile looked like something carved from nightmares. In his hand, he held a small plastic bag containing what looked like photographs. I've been learning so much about you, he said, his voice still carrying that same gentle warmth that had drawn me in at Chipotle. 6 years with David. Must have been hard when he cheated on you those last 2 years. My legs gave out. David hadn't cheated. David had been faithful, devoted. Our breakup had been mutual, amicable even. But William continued as if he hadn't noticed my confusion. I have all the photos he sold me, William said, spilling pictures across my coffee table. Every intimate moment. Every vulnerable second. He needed money for his new life, and I needed to know who you really were. The photographs scattered in the candlelight, and I saw myself in moments I'd never consented to be captured. Sleeping, showering, dressing. Years' worth of violations, taken by the man I'd trusted completely. David was very thorough in his documentation, William said, settling into my armchair as if he belonged there. And very willing to provide details about your routines, your fears, your weaknesses. Oh, amazing what people will do for the right price. I tried to scream, but only a whisper emerged. What do you want? William's smile widened, and in the candlelight, I could finally see what I'd missed at Chipotle. The predatory gleam that he'd hidden so well behind practiced charm. I want what I paid for, Marisol. David promised me 6 years of you. I'm here to collect. I thought it was Jeremy from 3B at first. The guy had always been weird, lingering in the hallway when I got home from work, asking too many questions about my schedule. So when I found the first note slipped under my door on a Tuesday morning, I rolled my eyes and crumpled it up.
Nice shirt.
That was it. No signature. Just those 2 words in careful block letters on a torn piece of notebook paper. I was wearing my blue button-down, nothing special. I tossed the note in the trash and forgot about it until Thursday.
You forgot to lock your window.
This one made me pause. I checked the living room window. Sure enough, the latch was undone. I must have opened it the night before for air and forgotten to secure it. Still, something about the observation felt invasive. Who was watching my apartment closely enough to notice? I knocked on Jeremy's door that evening, but he wasn't home, or wasn't answering. The hallway felt different somehow. Longer, darker. The fluorescent light at the far end flickered like a dying insect. The notes kept coming. You should sleep on your back. Less choking hazard. That one arrived on a Saturday. I'd been sleeping on my stomach my entire adult life, face buried in the pillow. The suggestion felt absurdly intimate, like someone had been watching me sleep. I checked all my windows twice that night, making sure every lock was engaged. The coffee maker makes too much noise at 6:17 a.m. Your neighbor's cat watches you through the peephole. That scream last night wasn't on TV. The last one made my blood freeze. I remembered the sound. A woman's terrified shriek that had jolted me awake around 2 a.m. I'd assumed it was from the late-night horror movie I'd fallen asleep watching, but thinking back, the TV had been muted. The remote was right there on my chest where I'd left it. I started keeping a baseball bat by the door, installed a Ring camera pointed down the hallway. The thing was, every morning there'd be a new note, but the camera never showed anyone approaching my door. Just empty hallway, hour after hour of nothing. And then suddenly there'd be paper on my doormat. I tried staying up, positioning myself where I could see the door through the peephole, but I'd always drift off eventually, and by morning, another note would be waiting. You grind your teeth when you're anxious. The milk in your fridge expires tomorrow. Stop looking for me. You'll never see me coming. I called the police, but what could I tell them? Someone was leaving me notes. The officer who took my statement looked bored. Any threats of violence? He asked. When I said no, he suggested I talk to my landlord about building security. My landlord, Mrs. Suarez, seemed genuinely concerned. She changed the locks on the building's main entrance and promised to review the security footage. But she called me 2 days later with confusion in her voice. Mr. Patterson, there's something strange about those tapes. The cameras show you coming and going, but, well, there's no one else. Not for weeks. Are you sure someone else has been in the building? That night, I wedged a chair under my doorknob and slept with the bat across my chest. Every sound made me jolt awake, the building settling, pipes creaking, the distant hum of the highway. But morning came peacefully. No note. I felt a surge of hope until I checked my phone. There was a text from an unknown number. Ran out of paper. Hope you slept well. I barely slept for the next 3 days. Survived on coffee and adrenaline, pacing my apartment like a caged animal. But exhaustion always wins. On the 4th night, I passed out on the couch around midnight. I woke to find a note on my pillow. You look so peaceful when you sleep." I froze. Every door was locked, every window sealed. The chair was still wedged under the doorknob. There was no way anyone could have entered my apartment, unless they'd never left. I searched every closet, every corner, behind every piece of furniture. Nothing. But in my bedroom mirror, I noticed something that made my knees buckle. There, barely visible in the dust on the glass, were letters traced by a finger. "Look closer." That's when I saw them. The details I'd missed. The coffee cup I didn't remember washing, sitting clean in the dish rack. The bathroom towel folded differently than I ever folded it. The bedroom curtains tied back in a way that wasn't my habit. Someone had been living in my apartment. Not visiting. Living. Moving around while I worked. Sleeping when I slept. Existing in the spaces between my awareness. The notes weren't messages from outside. They were communications from my invisible roommate, someone who knew my routines better than I knew them myself. I'm writing this from a hotel now. The police are investigating, but I know they won't find anything. Because whoever it was, they're gone now. They left one final note on my kitchen counter. "Thanks for sharing your home. See you at the new place." The terrifying part isn't that someone was living in my apartment without my knowledge. It's that I just gave the front desk clerk my new address when I checked in, and I swear I saw him smile and write it down twice.